Hi everyone, Rainer here from Rainier Books. This is my YouTube channel where I speak about books, and today I want to talk a little bit more about the long list of the Scotiabank Giller Prize that was published yesterday in Toronto, Canada, that was read by Ian Williams. I have made a live video about it. I didn't know much about the titles. I looked a little bit more into it, and here's a short summary of the titles on which titles I'm especially personally interested. Gil Adamson's novel Ridgerunner, which seems to me a novel about the West, about myths of the West. I was actually a little bit reminded of Cormac McCarthy's trilogy about the American West and American South. Excuse me. And Ridgerunner is a follow-up novel to a novel that was published in 2007, The Outlander by Gil Adamson. It's part literary western and part historical mystery, and it plays out in it starts in November of 1917, when the West, especially both the American and the Canadian West, which is the Canadian and American West today, was still not so inhabited by people as it is today. It's about a 12-year-old boy, Jack Bolton. He has been left in the care of Sister Beatrice, a formidable nun who keeps him in cloistered seclusion in her grand old house. Though he knows his father is coming for him to look for him, the boy longs to return to his family's cabin deep in the woods. Jack finally breaks free. He takes with him something the nun is determined to get back at any cost. The backdrop is the distant war raging in Europe, the First World War, the changing of the landscape of the American and Canadian West. This is a very historical novel that draws from the epic tradition and a literary western brimming with a cast of unforgettable characters touched with humor and loss and steeped in the wild of the natural world. Gil Adamson's novel Ridgerunner, which is the first on that long list. The second one is by a man who has already won the Scotiabank Giller Prize for his novel The Time in Between in 2005. Now he comes in on the long list with a selection of his short stories. I'm really interested in that book. That's the first one that I really marked for myself. It's called Hear the Dark. It was published by Biblioasis on March 10 of 2020. It says here from the publishers, from the streets of Da Nang, Vietnam, where a boy falls in with a young American missionary, to fishermen lost off the islands of Honduras, to the Canadian prairies, where a teenage boy's infatuation reveals his naivete and an aging rancher finds himself smitten. The short stories in Hear the Dark explore the spaces between doubt and belief, evil and good, obscurity and light, following men and boys bewildered by their circumstances and swayed by desire, surprised by love, and by their capacity for both tenderness and violence, and featuring a novella about a young woman who rejects the laws of her cloistered Mennonite community. A bunch of stories by David Bergen. The third book on that long list is Lynn Coady. I'm also interested in that one. Also, Lynn Coady is a former Giller Prize winner. She won the prize in 2013 for her short story collection Hellgoing. And Watching You Without Me is a novel by Lynn Coady that was published on July 7 by House of Anansi Press, which is a very important Canadian publisher situated in the city of Toronto. And this is about a book about a woman who is taking care of her sister, Karen. She is in Nova Scotia in her childhood home, exactly, and she's a full-time caregiver to her sister, Kaie, to her older sister. And she finds a shoulder to cry on in a guy named Trevor. And Trevor is also a caregiver, and he's helping her with taking care of Kaie, and becomes a friend. But this becomes a very dark and mysterious turn in that novel. Who is this person Karen has let into her home and into her family's life? How well does she know the stranger? It seems to be a very interesting thriller, not so very new from the conception of the story, because we have heard that sujet before, stranger comes into your house and everything changes. Number 4 on that list is Eva Crocker with a novel that's called House. Eva Crocker with All I Ask. August 4, House of Anansi Press. That was the house I wanted to mention. This is a story about a little before 7 in the morning, Stacy wakes to the police pounding on her door. And this is a new story, a younger story, a bold, embracing exploration of what it's like to be young in a time when everything and nothing seems possible. With a playwright's ear for dialogue and a wry, delicate confidence, Eva Crocker writes with a compassionate but unsentimental eye on human nature that perfectly captures the pitfalls of relying on the people you love. Sounds okay to me, but not that overwhelming as a story. To me, it has a lot to do with social media, apparently, that novel by Eva Crocker. I put it on the side a little bit. Then we have Emma Donoghue. I've talked about that book earlier. Emma Donoghue is an Irish-Canadian author. She lives in Canada now. She has become pretty famous with her novel Room, and she has published now Pull of the Stars with HarperCollins. And in Pull of the Stars, we go to Dublin, the capital of Ireland, in 1918, and we go right into the middle of the great pandemic, which was called the Spanish flu 100 years ago. Now we're in the middle of the second pandemic, so this sounds familiar. And this novel has been called by Kirkus Reviews, for example, her best novel since Room, and which sounds very promising. It's about a nurse, Julia Power. She works at a hospital in the city centre of Dublin. It's about a doctor, Kathleen Lynn, a rebel doctor on the run from the police, and a young volunteer helper, Bridie Sweeney. These are the three women, the characters that bear the novel in this baffling pandemic. It sounds interesting to me. I really would like to take a look at Emma Donoghue's Pull of the Stars. She has written that book before our pandemic, so that was before it happened. Then we come to a novel that brings African mythologies, but also African overnatural beliefs in a way to Canadian literature in the form of immigrant literature by Francesca Ekwuyasi, Butter, Honey, Pig Bread, which was published by Arsenal Pulp Press. It's going to be published by Arsenal Pulp Press on November the 3rd this year. It's about 3 continents, it's about 3 Nigerian women, and a woman called Kambiri Nachi and her twin daughters Kahinda and Taye. And Kambiri Nachi, the mother, believes that she is an Ogbanji or an Abiku, which is a non-human spirit that plagues a family with misfortune by being born and then dying in childhood to cause a human mother misery. She has made the unnatural choice of staying alive to love her human family, but lives in fear of the consequences of her decision. This is a story that plays mainly in Nigeria. It's interesting for readers of other African diasporic authors like Tiju Cole and Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie, a story of choices and the consequences of motherhood, of the malleable line between the spirit and the mind, of finding new homes and mending old ones, of vocacious appetites, of queer love, of friendship, and above all, about family. I didn't find that one too interesting because I don't like the supernatural stuff so much. I'm not that interested in this book. I go on with the next, which is probably the novel that really inspires, that interests me the most from just reading the content of those novels and short story collections that are nominated for the Scotiabank Giller Prize. And this is Michelle Good, 5 Little Indians. That was published by Harper Perennial, April 14, 2020. This is my favorite when I just look at what is this book about. 5 Little Indians is about, she's a writer, Michelle Good is a writer of Cree ancestry and a member of the Red Pheasant Cree Nation in Saskatchewan. She's a First Nation Canadian. And this is a novel about 5 people, Kenny, Lucy, Clara, Howie, and Maisie, who were taken as very small children away from their families, grabbed away from their families, and put into the so-called residential schools, where Canada over more than a century has tried to eliminate, to erase, to delete everything about the First Nation experience and First Nation culture from those poor children, and traumatized them, PTSD'd them, tortured them in horrible conditions to make them Canadians, to erase their cultural heritage. 5 Little Indians is a novel that shows us what becomes of those people who have left the residential school, those 5 youngsters, alone and without any skill, support their families. The teens find their way to the seedy and foreign world of downtown east side of Vancouver, where they cling together, striving to find a place of safety and belonging in a world that doesn't want them. The paths of the 5 friends cross and crisscross over the decades as they struggle to overcome, or at least forget, the trauma they endured during the years in the mission. Fueled by rage and furies with God, Clara finds a way to the dangerous, highly charged world of the American Indian movement. Maisie internalizes her pain and continually places herself in dangerous situations. Kenny can't stop running and moves restlessly from job to job. So the 5 lives of those people, they are described in that novel, 5 Little Indians by Michelle Good. And this is so interesting, so compelling, and such a part of Canadian history that needs to be shown to the world and to the readers. That is really the one that interests me most. And I have good news, at least for myself, because yesterday I was looking, I already found that novel, and it's here on my Kindle already. It's very, if you are in the United States, or if you have access to the United States, Amazon, this is not an advertisement, Amazon website, you can buy 5 Little Indians for $2.05 or something like that. It's very, very affordable right now. And I think this is the novel that really got me the most interest, the most interest for me, and of the 14. But I like many more of the 14. We have another author, Kaie Kellough. I don't know if I remember, if I pronounced that correctly. Short story collection by him, which has been published in February this year in 2020 by, it's called Dominoes at the Crossroads. Short stories about mainly Caribbean Canadians on different parts of the world. So this is not only in Canada about Caribbean Canadians, it's about student radicals, secret agents, historians, fugitive slaves, or jazz musicians. From the cobblestones of Montreal's old port, the foliage of a South American rainforest, from a basement in wartime Paris to a metro in Montreal during the October crisis, Kellough's fierce imagination reconciles the personal and ancestral experience with the present moment, grappling with the abiding feeling of being elsewhere even when here. This sounds very interesting as well. And I like it about the Giller Prize and even about the National Book Award, Hello Booker, that they include short story collections, because sometimes short stories can open up a world in a more broader perspective and take you to several places in a smaller book. Thomas King, Indians on Vacation. Thomas King is a very established First Nation Canadian author. I think he's 75 years old, a little bit older maybe. And his book Indians on Vacation is nominated here. It was published on August 25. It's about Bird and Mimi, 2 First Nation Canadians who make a trip to Europe to follow up postcards that their uncle Leroy, 100 years earlier, has sent from Europe. And this sounds very interesting and nice. By turns witty, sly, and poignant, this is the unforgettable tale of one couple's holiday trip to Europe, where their wanderings through its famous capitals reveal a complicated history, both personal and historical. Indians on the Road by Thomas King. Annabel, Lyon. That novel is coming out on September 23 by Random House. Annabel Lyon, the novel is called Consent. It's about Saskia and Jenny, twins alike in appearance only. Saskia is a grad student with a single-minded focus on her studies, while Jenny is glamorous, thrill-seeking, and capricious. Still, when Jenny is severely injured in an accident, Saskia puts her life on hold to be with her sister. Sarah and Maddie are sisters with another difficult dynamic. Maddie, who is younger, is intellectually disabled. Sarah loves nothing more than fine wines, perfumes, and expensive clothing, and leaves home at the first opportunity. But when their mother dies, Sarah inherits the duty of caring for her sister. She moves Maddie in with her, but it's not long until tragedy strikes. Now, both Sarah and Saskia, having been caregivers for so long, find themselves on their own. Yet through a cascade of circumstances as devastating as they are unexpected, these 2 women will come together. Razor sharp and profoundly moving, Consent is a thought-provoking exploration of the complexities of familial duty and of how love can become entangled with guilt. I got a pizza delivered, I got a pizza delivered. I gotta catch the pizza. The 11th title on the Scotiabank Giller Longlist is Polar Vortex by Shani Mootoo, published on September 15 in next week by Akashic Books. This is a seductive and tension-filled novel about Priya and Alex, a lesbian couple who left the big city to relocate to a bucolic countryside community. It seemed like a good way to leave their past behind and cement their newish later in life relationship. But there's leaving the past behind and there's running away from awkward histories. There are secrets in that relationship, and those secrets are going to be revealed in the course of the novel, and people have to face the inevitable consequences of their choices. Nothing new, but always told in a new way, and always interesting. The 12th book on the long list is a book that I didn't like. I tried to read it. It is Emily St. John Mandel's The Glass House, that was published by Knopf in the United States and Canada on March the 24th. It's about Vincent, a bartender at the Hotel Kaie, and it's about Jonathan Alcides, a guy who is a crook, who is doing the schemes and making a lot of money in the international crime is committed, a so-called Ponzi scheme. That's what it's called in English, apparently. We call that pyramids in German, those kind of betrayals, those kind of fraud. Emily St. John Mandel takes readers through often hidden landscapes, campgrounds for the neo-homeless underground, electronica clubs, the business of international shipping service and luxury hotels, and life in a federal prison. A captivating portrait of greed and guilt, love and delusion, ghosts and unintended consequences, and the infinite ways we search for meaning in our lives. I wasn't really touched. I was never immersed in that novel, and I gave up pretty shortly because I didn't like the language, I didn't like the way the story was told. Number 13, this is for all the graphic novel fans. I have, graphic novel is a genre that is, or it's not a genre actually, it's a kind of way to write a novel, to make a novel, to draw a novel, and to write it that is just different from just writing. So this is by Gregory Gallant, actually a man who was born on the 16th of September in 1962, and so is your favorite booktuber, that's me. And that's Seth, and he has, Seth is his name as an artist, and he's publishing Clyde Fans. It's barely 20 years in the making, great work. Peels back the optimism of mid-20th century capitalism. He's a legendary Canadian cartoonist. Oh my god, he's in the age of being a legend and a legendary guy like me. I'm not a legend, I'm not legendary. But anyway, I'm sure Seth is. And Delusions of a Middle Class That Has Long Ceased to Exist in North America sounds very interesting. This graphic novel called Clyde Fans. And the last book that is on the list, and now we have 14, is the third short story collection by Souvankham Thammavongsa. It's called How to Pronounce Knife by Random House in Canada, published. It sounds very interesting to me as well. A failed boxer painting nails at the local salon, a woman plucking feathers at a chicken processing plant, a housewife learning English from daytime soap operas, and a mother teaching her daughter the art of worm harvesting. In her stunning debut story collection, O. Henry Award winner Souvankham Thammavongsa focuses on characters struggling to make a living, illuminating their hopes, disappointments, love affairs, acts of defiance, and above all, their pursuit of a place to belong. This is the last of the four. I think the Scotiabank Giller Prize of 2020 has another very good year of Canadian literature. It sounds very diverse. We have 3 short story collections. We have 11 novels. One of them is a graphic novel. We have 10 women and 4 men, I think, on that list too. And that's about it for today. And I also have to do that, Karen, if you see this, I really love that you tagged me for this tag that you invented, the 13 Autumn Halloween tag. I'm working on that pretty hard. I'm trying to give you all some recommendations of really, really tough thrillers, the best thrillers that I've read over the years, some other things, and a beautiful German poem, which I will read it for you in both German and English. So, wait for that, stay tuned, and have a good week, or a good rest of the week, a good day wherever you are, all around the world. Thank you very much, And this is actually the OSU, the Oregon State University t-shirt that I'm wearing today. Greetings to Oregon, but to every place else in the world. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.